It was a typical Wednesday morning at downtown Family Pharmacy, where the smell of antiseptic mingled with the gentle hum of fluorescent lights. Behind the pristine counter stood the head pharmacist, wearing a crisp white coat with his credentials neatly displayed. His warm brown eyes sparkled with patience as he helped each customer, his name tag gleaming under the pharmacy lights. The morning rush had brought in the usual mix of people: elderly folks picking up their prescriptions, young parents with sleeping babies, and office workers grabbing quick supplies before heading to work. The pharmacist moved with practiced efficiency, greeting each person with a genuine smile that reached his eyes, making everyone feel welcome and cared for. Around 10:30 a.m., when the initial morning rush had settled, the bell above the door chimed. In walked a well-dressed man in an expensive suit, his leather shoes clicking against the tile floor. He carried himself with an air of self-importance, nose slightly turned up as he surveyed the store. His designer watch glinted as he checked the time, making it clear he thought this stop was beneath him. The man joined the short line, tapping his foot impatiently. When it was finally his turn, he stepped forward, barely glancing at the pharmacist before demanding to speak with whoever's really in charge here. His voice carried through the store, making other customers look up from their shopping. The pharmacist maintained his professional demeanor, smile unwavering as he responded, "I'd be happy to help you, sir. I'm the pharmacist on duty." His voice was steady and confident, reflecting years of experience and expertise. But the customer wasn't having it. His face twisted into an unpleasant sneer as he looked the pharmacist up and down. "No, I mean the real pharmacist," he said, emphasizing each word as if speaking to a child. "Someone more." He paused, choosing his next words carefully but making his prejudice clear through his tone and gesture. "Qualified." The small group of customers still in line shifted uncomfortably. An elderly woman clutched her prescription bag tighter, shaking her head in disapproval. A young man in scrubs frowned, taking a step forward as if to intervene. What made this situation even more remarkable was that the man couldn't see what everyone else in the neighborhood knew. The pharmacist he was dismissing wasn't just any healthcare professional. He was the owner of not just this pharmacy, but a growing chain of 5 successful locations across the city. His story was one of dedication and perseverance, having graduated at the top of his class from one of the nation's most prestigious universities. Despite the customer's rudeness, the pharmacist remained composed. His years of experience had taught him that responding to hatred with more hatred never solved anything. Instead, he straightened his shoulders, adjusted his white coat, and said in a clear, professional voice, "Sir, I understand you might have concerns, but I can assure you that I'm fully qualified to help you with whatever you need. However, I'll need you to speak to me respectfully, just as I'm speaking to you." The tension in the air was palpable. Other customers watched the scene unfold, some recording discreetly on their phones, others whispering among themselves. The morning sunlight streamed through the large front windows, highlighting the stark contrast between the pharmacist's dignified professionalism and the customer's obvious prejudice. Little did this arrogant customer know that his actions that morning would set in motion a chain of events that would not only change his own life, but would also become a powerful story of transformation that would spread throughout the community. His moment of prejudice was about to meet a humbling reality that no one in the store could have predicted. The well-dressed customer wasn't finished with his tirade. He pulled out his phone, waving it like a weapon as he threatened to call corporate and report the pharmacy. A young mother pulled her child closer, whispering something soothing to the confused little one who was watching the scene with wide eyes. "I drive a Mercedes," the man announced loudly, as if his choice of car somehow made him an expert in pharmaceuticals. "I work with important people. I know what real professionals look like." He gestured dismissively at the pharmacist's white coat and credentials. "This is ridiculous. I demand to speak to the actual owner of this establishment." The pharmacist took a slow, steady breath. Years of building his business from the ground up had taught him patience in the face of prejudice. He'd encountered similar situations before, though perhaps none quite so blatant. His hands remained steady as he organized some papers on the counter, a habit he'd developed to stay calm during tense moments. "Sir," he began again, his voice carrying the weight of authority without aggression, "I can show you my licenses and credentials if that would help. But I need you to understand that speaking to anyone this way is unacceptable in my pharmacy." The emphasis on "my" was subtle but clear. A regular customer who just walked in instantly recognized what was happening. She was a local high school teacher who'd been coming to this pharmacy for years. She watched the scene unfold with growing disbelief, knowing full well the accomplishments of the man behind the counter. The angry customer scoffed, his expensive watch catching the light as he gestured wildly. "Your pharmacy? That's a good one. Listen, I've been in the medical supply business for 20 years. I know every pharmacy owner in this city, and you're definitely not." He was cut off by the teacher, who'd had enough. "Excuse me," she said, stepping forward with a newspaper clipping in her hand. She'd been meaning to ask the pharmacist to sign it for her students. It was last month's feature article about successful local businesses, with a full-color photo of the pharmacist standing proudly in front of his 5 locations. The other customers in line began murmuring. Some had already recognized him from the local news coverage of his charity work, providing free medications to elderly residents during the last winter storm. Others remembered how he'd kept his pharmacies open late during a citywide emergency, ensuring everyone got their needed medications. The well-dressed man's face began to change as he looked from the newspaper clipping to the pharmacist and back again. His confident posture faltered slightly, and the hand holding his phone lowered slowly. The article clearly showed not only the pharmacist's impressive educational background, but also detailed how he built his business from scratch, now employing over 50 people across his locations. One of the pharmacy technicians, who'd been watching nervously from behind the counter, stepped forward with another frame, this one containing the pharmacist's multiple community service awards. The display included recognition from the city council for his innovative program helping low-income families afford their prescriptions. The color began draining from the customer's face as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. The man who he'd been belittling wasn't just any pharmacist. He was one of the most respected business owners in the area. His pharmacy chain was known for its exceptional service, modern facilities, and the owner's hands-on approach to patient care. Other customers were now openly sharing stories of how the pharmacist had helped them personally. An elderly man mentioned how he'd received home delivery during bad weather, while a young woman recalled how the pharmacist had spent an hour explaining her new medication when she was scared about starting treatment. The well-dressed man's arrogance crumbled with each new revelation. He stood there, his expensive suit suddenly seeming less impressive, as the reality of his prejudiced assumptions came crashing down around him. Little did he know, this moment of humiliation was just the beginning of a story that would change not only his life, but also the lives of many others in unexpected ways. As the truth about the pharmacist's success began to sink in, the atmosphere in the pharmacy shifted dramatically. The well-dressed customer's face had turned from a shade of angry red to a pale white, his expensive suit suddenly feeling too tight around the collar. His eyes darted around the store, taking in details he'd ignored in his earlier arrogance. The modern equipment, the spotless shelves, the efficient layout. Everything spoke of thoughtful ownership and careful management. The local teacher was still holding up the newspaper article, and now more customers gathered around to look at it. The feature story revealed impressive details about the pharmacy owner's journey. He'd graduated with top honors from his university, turned down lucrative offers from major pharmaceutical companies, and instead chose to serve his local community by opening his first pharmacy with savings and a small business loan. He started in that tiny store on Oak Street, one elderly customer shared, pointing to a photo in the article. "Look how far he's come now. 5 locations, and he still remembers every regular customer's name." Others nodded in agreement, sharing their own stories of the pharmacist's dedication. The article went on to detail how he revolutionized local healthcare access. His pharmacies were the first in the area to offer a sliding-scale payment system for uninsured patients. He'd also implemented a groundbreaking medication management program that helped elderly customers keep track of their prescriptions, which had reduced hospitalization rates in the community. One of the pharmacy technicians brought out a community award plaque that normally hung in the break room. It was from the city's Chamber of Commerce, recognizing the pharmacist's innovative business model that prioritized patient care over profits. The plaque mentioned how his approach had inspired other local businesses to adopt more community-focused practices. The well-dressed customer stood frozen, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. His phone, which he'd been so eager to use for complaints earlier, now hung limply in his hand. The designer watch he'd been so proud of seemed meaningless compared to the wall of achievements before him. But what truly drove home the magnitude of his mistake were the personal stories that customers continued to share. A young parent spoke up about how the pharmacist had stayed late one night to prepare an emergency prescription for their child. Another mentioned how he personally delivered medications during a snowstorm to elderly patients who couldn't leave their homes. The pharmacist himself remained composed throughout all of this, continuing to organize prescriptions and assist other customers. His quiet dignity in the face of prejudice spoke volumes about his character. He didn't need to boast about his achievements. His community was doing it for him. A business owner from across the street had wandered in during the commotion and added his own perspective. He described how the pharmacist had helped multiple small businesses in the area survive during tough times by organizing local business fairs and creating a neighborhood support network. His pharmacy had become more than just a medical facility. It was a cornerstone of the community. The well-dressed customer's expensive shoes squeaked against the clean floor as he shifted uncomfortably. Each new revelation was like a physical blow to his prejudiced assumptions. The man who he'd dismissed based on appearance was not only more qualified than him, but was also a pillar of the local community and a successful entrepreneur whose influence extended far beyond the walls of this pharmacy. As the stories continued to flow, security cameras silently recorded what would soon become a viral moment of transformation. The customer's journey from arrogant prejudice to humbling realization was about to take an even more unexpected turn, one that would test both his character and the pharmacist's capacity for forgiveness in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The well-dressed customer cleared his throat awkwardly, tugging at his expensive tie that now felt more like a noose. The morning sunlight streaming through the pharmacy windows seemed to spotlight him in his moment of shame. His earlier complaints about wanting to speak to whoever's really in charge now echoed mockingly in his head. One of the younger staff members had pulled up a video on her phone, a local news segment from last month. The report showed the pharmacist speaking at a healthcare conference, where he presented his innovative approach to community pharmacy services. Business leaders and healthcare professionals from across the country had attended to learn from his success story. "Turn it up," someone in the growing crowd requested. The phone speaker projected the reporter's voice, revolutionizing local healthcare access through his chain of pharmacies. His patient-first approach has caught the attention of national healthcare organizations, with many looking to implement his model nationwide. The customer's face flushed deeper with each word. His eyes darted toward the door, but the crowd of supportive customers and staff had unintentionally blocked his escape route. The designer briefcase he proudly carried and now hung limply at his side, seeming to weigh 1,000 pounds. A delivery driver who just walked in added his own story to the mix. He described how the pharmacist had helped him understand his diabetes medication when no other healthcare provider had taken the time. "He didn't just explain the medicine," the driver said, his voice thick with emotion. "He helped me create a whole health plan, even recommended a good doctor. I've lost 30 pounds since then." The pharmacist continued working throughout all this, efficiently filling prescriptions while maintaining his professional demeanor. He'd seen the security footage being shared on a customer's phone. Someone had already started uploading clips of the earlier confrontation to social media. The contrast between his calm professionalism and the customer's prejudiced behavior was striking. A local nurse who'd stopped in for her prescription shared how the pharmacist's attention to detail had caught several potentially dangerous medication interactions over the years. "He's probably saved more lives from behind that counter than most people realize," she said, giving the well-dressed customer a disapproving look. The evidence of the pharmacist's success and community impact kept mounting. A framed certificate revealed he'd been appointed to the state's Board of Pharmacy. Another showed his recognition as Business Leader of the Year. Each achievement seemed to shrink the arrogant customer smaller and smaller. Someone had found an article about the pharmacist scholarship program for aspiring pharmacy students from underprivileged backgrounds. He'd already helped 5 students achieve their dreams of entering the healthcare field. The program was set to expand to 10 scholarships next year. The well-dressed customer's phone buzzed in his pocket, probably another business call he'd normally answer immediately. But right now, he couldn't move. The weight of his prejudiced assumptions and public humiliation had rooted him to the spot. His world of self-importance and prejudice was crumbling around him. Through it all, the pharmacist maintained his composure, though the security cameras caught the subtle smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He'd dealt with prejudice before, but rarely had the universe arranged such a perfect moment of justice. What he didn't know was that this moment would lead to an even more surprising turn of events, one that would test his capacity for forgiveness and change both their lives forever. The tension in the pharmacy reached its peak as another staff member emerged from the back office with a thick folder. Inside were letters, dozens of them, from community members thanking the pharmacist for his help during tough times. The young staff member began reading one aloud, her voice clear in the now quiet store. "Your kindness saved my mother's life," she read. "When we couldn't afford her heart medication, you found a way to help us. You never made us feel ashamed. You treated us with dignity." The well-dressed customer shifted uncomfortably, the words hitting close to home. More photographs emerged, showing the pharmacist at various community events. There he was serving meals at the local shelter during holidays. Another showed him giving a health lecture at the senior center. Each image painted a picture of a man deeply invested in his community's well-being, the very man the customer had so quickly judged and dismissed. The customer's expensive phone kept buzzing, but now it seemed to mock him. His earlier boasts about his Mercedes and important connections felt hollow in the face of such genuine accomplishment and community impact. He watched as the pharmacist expertly advised an elderly patient about her medications, taking time to write down instructions in large, clear letters. A small business owner from next door had joined the growing crowd. She shared how during the recent economic downturn, the pharmacist had helped local shops by creating a business support network. He could have focused on just his own success, she explained, but he believed in lifting the whole community up. The security cameras continued recording as the customer's face cycled through various emotions: embarrassment, shame, and finally, something that looked like genuine regret. His designer suit, which had given him such confidence earlier, now seemed to hang awkwardly on his shoulders. A teenage volunteer who worked weekends at the pharmacy spoke up next. She explained how the pharmacist had created a youth mentorship program, helping local students learn about healthcare careers. "He doesn't just run a business," she said proudly. "He builds futures." The pharmacist continued his work throughout all this, measuring medications with steady hands and double-checking prescriptions with careful eyes. His quiet dignity spoke volumes, especially compared to the customer's earlier loud prejudice. The morning sun highlighted the gray at his temples, earned through years of dedicated service to his community. Someone had pulled up the pharmacy's website on their phone, showing the innovative online prescription management system he'd developed. It was now being adopted by other independent pharmacies across the state. The well-dressed customer, who'd bragged about his business connections, realized he was standing in front of a true innovator. The front door chimed as more customers entered, creating a brief break in the tension. They quickly caught on to what was happening as they saw the gathering of people and the various articles and awards on display. The new arrivals added their own stories to the mix, each one driving home the customer's massive misjudgment. Through it all, the security cameras captured every moment of this unfolding story. The footage would later go viral, but not for the reason most people would expect. What was about to happen next would transform this moment of public shame into something much more meaningful, a genuine lesson about prejudice, humility, and the power of forgiveness. 2 weeks passed. The pharmacy continued its usual busy routine, though the story of the prejudiced customer had become something of a local legend. The security camera footage had indeed gone viral, but the pharmacist had asked people not to share the customer's identity, showing grace even after such poor treatment. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the bell above the pharmacy door chimed. The well-dressed customer from before stepped in, but this time he was different. His expensive suit was replaced by casual clothes, his arrogant stride now a humble walk. The designer watch and flashy accessories were gone. Even his face seemed changed, humbled by the weight of his actions. The regular customers recognized him immediately. A few whispered among themselves, watching as he approached the counter. The pharmacist looked up from his work, his expression professional but guarded. The last encounter was still fresh in everyone's mind. "I've been trying to find the courage to come back," the customer began, his voice barely above a whisper. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out a newspaper from his bag. It was another article about the pharmacy, but this one was different. It detailed how the business had expanded its community health programs, while other pharmacies were cutting services. The customer cleared his throat and continued, "I lost my job last week." The words seemed to pain him. The company I worked for, the one I was so proud of, they were cutting corners with medical supplies. When I reported it, they let me go. His voice cracked slightly, the irony of his situation not lost on anyone listening. The pharmacy staff paused their work, watching this unexpected scene unfold. The security cameras whirred quietly, recording what would become another viral moment. But for entirely different reasons. "I've been to every pharmacy in the city looking for work," he continued, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine humility. "Nobody will hire me. My reputation—" He paused, swallowing hard. "Well, I guess karma is real." The pharmacist listened quietly, his years of experience helping him read the sincerity in the man's words. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting the gray hairs at the customer's temples. Stress from recent events had clearly taken its toll. Other customers in the store watched with interest as the man pulled out more papers, his resume, letters of recommendation from before his firing, certifications from his years in the medical supply business. His hand shook as he placed them on the counter. "I know I don't deserve it," he said, his voice steady despite his obvious nervousness. "But I spent these past 2 weeks learning everything I could about your business. What you've built here, it's amazing. The programs you've created, the lives you've changed." He gestured to the wall of thank you letters. "I was so wrong about everything." The pharmacy had gone quiet, everyone waiting to see how the pharmacist would respond. Even the usual beeping of the prescription scanning system seemed muted, as if the machines themselves were holding their breath. The customer continued, his voice growing stronger with sincerity. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. But if there's any position, any job at all, I want to learn. I want to be part of something that actually helps people, not just makes money." His eyes, once full of prejudice and superiority, now showed genuine remorse and hope. What happened next would not only surprise everyone in the pharmacy, but would become a powerful lesson about redemption, second chances, and the true meaning of professional integrity. The pharmacist studied the man before him, taking in the dramatic change from their last encounter. The security cameras continued their silent recording as he picked up the resume from the counter. The morning light caught the slight tremor in the former customer's hands, a far cry from his previously confident demeanor. "Tell me," the pharmacist said, his voice calm but firm, "what made you report those supply issues at your old company?" It was a simple question, but one that carried enormous weight. The other customers and staff leaned in slightly, curious about the answer. The man took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging slightly. "After what happened here, I started seeing things differently. I couldn't sleep at night knowing we were cutting corners that could harm people. When I saw the inspection reports, he paused, collecting himself. I realized I'd spent years being part of the problem. I couldn't do it anymore. A delivery driver entered the pharmacy but stopped in his tracks, recognizing the scene unfolding. He'd been there during the original confrontation, and now watched with interest as this new chapter developed. The pharmacist nodded thoughtfully, then walked around the counter. He picked up one of the many thank you letters from the wall. "This one," he said, "is from a family who couldn't afford their child's asthma medication. We found a way to help them." He picked up another. "This person lost their job and insurance. We worked out a payment plan." The former customer listened intently, his eyes moving from letter to letter. The wall of gratitude stood as a testament to what healthcare could be when profit wasn't the only goal. "Your resume shows 20 years in medical supply," the pharmacist continued. "That's valuable experience. But what matters more is what you do with that experience." He gestured to the busy pharmacy around them. "Every person who walks through that door trusts us with their health, their dignity, sometimes their life savings." A young mother with a sleeping baby in her arms watched from near the vitamin aisle. She'd been a regular customer for years and had never seen the pharmacist quite so serious. "If I were to offer you a position," the pharmacist said carefully, "it wouldn't be easy. You'd start at the bottom. Learn every aspect of how we serve our community. Work alongside people from all walks of life." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And you'd need to complete our full training program, including our cultural sensitivity courses." The former customer nodded eagerly, hope beginning to shine in his eyes. "I'll do anything," he said softly. "I just want a chance to make things right." The pharmacy's regular customers watched in amazement as the scene continued to unfold. Some had their phones out, discreetly recording what they sensed was a powerful moment of transformation. "There's one more thing," the pharmacist added, his voice carrying across the now quiet store. "Every Saturday we run a free clinic for people who can't afford regular health care. It's not part of the job description, but every member of our team volunteers their time. Would you be willing to do that?" Without hesitation, the man nodded, tears forming in the corners of his eyes. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, absolutely." What happened next would become the talk of the community, a testament to the power of forgiveness and the possibility of genuine change. The security cameras captured every moment of what would soon become a viral story of redemption. The pharmacist extended his hand to the former customer, a gesture that carried more weight than words could express. 6 months probation," he said firmly. "You'll start Monday at 8 a.m. sharp." The quiet pharmacy erupted in soft murmurs of surprise and approval. A young pharmacy technician stepped forward, holding a spare name badge and a crisp white coat. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The very uniform the man had dismissed weeks ago would now become his own. His hands trembled slightly as he accepted them, the reality of this second chance sinking in. "First thing Monday morning, you'll join our morning huddle," the pharmacist explained, his voice carrying the authority of a leader who'd earned his position through hard work and dedication. "We discuss not just prescriptions and inventory, but also who in our community might need extra help that day." The former customer nodded eagerly, clutching the white coat like a lifeline. Gone was the expensive suit and arrogant demeanor, replaced by genuine humility and gratitude. The security cameras continued their silent witness to this moment of transformation. An elderly regular customer, who'd been quietly watching while waiting for her prescription, stepped forward. "I remember when you were so rude to our pharmacist," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I hope you'll learn what we all know, that this pharmacy is more than just a business. It's a blessing to our community." The man turned to her, tears threatening to spill from his eyes. "I promise to learn," he said softly. "I want to be part of making a difference, the way he does." He gestured toward the pharmacist, the respect in his voice genuine and heartfelt. The pharmacy staff gathered around, each sharing brief insights about their roles and responsibilities. One talked about the early morning deliveries to homebound patients. Another mentioned the weekly health education classes they offered in the community room. Each description painted a picture of healthcare delivered with compassion and dignity. "You'll need to learn our computer system," a technician explained, pointing to the modern equipment behind the counter. "But more importantly, you'll need to learn our patients' stories. We're not just filling prescriptions here. We're helping people live better lives." The pharmacist watched this interaction with quiet satisfaction. He'd seen potential in the man's remorse, not just regret for being caught in his prejudice, but genuine shame for his previous worldview. The morning light streaming through the windows seemed to highlight this moment of new beginnings. A mother with 2 small children approached the counter for her prescription. Seeing the scene unfolding, she shared her own story about how the pharmacy had helped her family during tough times. Her words brought fresh tears to the former customer's eyes as he realized the depth of community impact he'd so quickly dismissed before. "Remember," the pharmacist said, addressing his newest employee, "every person who walks through that door deserves respect, regardless of their appearance, background, or ability to pay. That's non-negotiable here." The man straightened his shoulders, holding the white coat with newfound reverence. "I understand now," he said, his voice steady despite his emotion. "I'll never forget the lesson you've taught me through your forgiveness." The other customers in the store, who'd been watching this scene unfold, began to drift back to their shopping, but many wore small smiles. They'd witnessed something rare and precious, a moment of genuine transformation, where prejudice gave way to understanding, and arrogance transformed into humility. What no one knew yet was how this story of redemption would ripple out into the community, touching lives in ways that would surprise everyone, even the pharmacist himself. 6 months later, the pharmacy buzzed with its usual morning activity. The former customer, now a valued team member, moved confidently behind the counter in his white coat. His transformation had become a powerful story in the community, but the real changes went far deeper than anyone expected. He was the first to arrive each morning, making sure the elderly patients' prescriptions were ready for early pickup. The designer suits and flashy watches were long gone, replaced by comfortable professional attire and a warm smile that reached his eyes. The security cameras that had captured his infamous first visit now recorded daily moments of kindness and dedication. "Remember how he used to be?" one regular customer whispered to another as they watched him patiently explain medication instructions to a young mother. "Now he's the one who stays late to help people who can't afford their prescriptions." The pharmacy's free Saturday clinic had grown significantly, partly due to his dedication. He'd used his business connections, the same ones he'd once bragged about, to secure additional medical supplies and support for the community programs. His knowledge of the medical supply industry, combined with his new understanding of community needs, had helped the pharmacy extend its reach to even more people in need. One morning, a well-dressed executive walked in, wearing an expensive suit similar to the one he used to wear. The executive's attitude was dismissive, reminding everyone of how he himself had behaved that fateful day. Instead of getting angry, he stepped forward with empathy and understanding. "Sir," he said gently, "let me tell you about the amazing work we do here." His voice carried the weight of someone who'd learned life's most valuable lessons the hard way. The other staff members watched proudly as he transformed another potential conflict into an opportunity for understanding. The pharmacist observed all this from his office, where he was reviewing plans for their 6th location. The security footage from that first confrontation had indeed gone viral, but not as a story of shame. Instead, it had become a powerful testament to the possibility of change, viewed millions of times as an example of how prejudice could be transformed through humility and forgiveness. Local business schools now used their story as a case study in community-focused business practices. The former customer had even been invited to speak at several conferences about his journey from corporate greed to community service. His speeches always began with the story of his humbling experience at the pharmacy. "The real success story isn't just about me," he would tell his audiences, gesturing to the pharmacist, who often accompanied him to these talks. "It's about what happens when we put aside our prejudices and truly serve our community." The pharmacy had become known as more than just a place to fill prescriptions. It was a symbol of transformation and second chances. Other businesses in the area had started adopting similar community-focused approaches, creating a ripple effect of positive change throughout the city. 1 year to the day after the initial confrontation, the pharmacist called a staff meeting. The security camera footage from that fateful day played on a screen, but now it brought smiles rather than tension. The former customer, standing tall in his white coat, shared tears and laughter with his colleagues, now his friends, as they celebrated not just his transformation, but the growth of their shared mission to serve others. As the morning sun streamed through the pharmacy windows, highlighting the wall of thank you letters that had grown even larger, it was clear that this story had become more than just a viral moment or a lesson in humility. It had become a testament to the power of forgiveness, the possibility of genuine change, and the profound impact that compassion can have on an entire community.